This is my interview with Jackie Weaver, who is the Chief Officer of the Cheshire Association of Local Councils. Now, Jackie hit the headlines and went viral on Twitter after the Handforth Parish Council meeting went viral. She removed members from that meeting because of the way that they were reacting and the way that they were talking to her and the other members in that meeting. Now, this interview was really interesting because we spoke about the meeting and how all this spotlight has changed her and what she's most surprised about, the reaction from all of this. We also spoke about young people in local politics. 43% of local councillors are over 65. So it was interesting to find out how Jackie thought that we could encourage younger people into local politics. So please enjoy. Jackie Weaver, thank you so much for your time. I hope you are keeping well. Over the past few weeks, you've become a household name and began trending on Twitter after the Handforth Parish Council meeting went viral. How did you find out about this, and were you shocked when this all occurred?
Well, I mean, first of all, of course, this happened back in 10th of December, I think it was. So we've all moved on since then. And the first thing that I heard about it was somebody sent me a text message, I think it was, with a screenshot saying you're trending number 3, which meant absolutely nothing to me whatsoever. Yeah. So I thought, nope, I know a young person. I have 3 sons. So I sent it off to my son and got nothing back. So I thought, oh, well, that can't be anything terribly important. And the following morning, the world just went, my world just mad. Photographers, reporters, phone ringing off the hook, message box full, and my son rang my husband and said, I've just seen it. I didn't realise he thought I'd sent something for, copied him in on some spoof or something like that and thought he didn't need a comment. So it was surreal and continues to be.
So when you first joined that meeting for that call, did you expect the meeting to go in the direction that it eventually went in?
I was expecting the journey. I'm not sure I was expecting the destination. I mean, I think it's clear to anyone watching it, this isn't something that blew up out of something that was said on the night. Because, I mean, we are talking about, people working in local democracy who feel very passionately about their area. Yeah. So it's not unusual to have situations where people do have fiery conversations and put their points across quite enthusiastically. But certainly you don't expect anything like we saw on the Handforth video that night.
And in your opinion, do you think this would have happened face to face, or do you think it escalated because it was on Zoom and because it was virtual?
I think that's an interesting point. I mean, I think everyone who has, we've pretty much all had a year's experience of working like this virtually online. And I think people do behave differently. I mean, there's lots of positives. I mean, people like me feel much more confident about talking to, strangers, basically. Yeah. That might be less comfortable if we were in a room together. So it has a real positive. But I mean, we've all seen, a glass of wine on the table, a pint of beer on the table, a pair of socks up on the table. I mean, people clearly don't always get that sense of them being visible. I mean, I suppose I always liken it to, when you're stopped at traffic lights and you look across to the person in a car next to you and you think, do you not know that I can see through these windows? Yes. Yeah, and clearly they're in their own bubble.
Because it would have been harder to control, to remove them from the meeting. If it had been face-to-face, it could have got maybe violent, I don't know, like if it was a face-to-face occurrence.
In many ways, yes, it would have been intimidating. Of course it would. I mean, I don't think any of us are, well, maybe some people are, but I certainly wouldn't be ready to face a very angry man. The way my family treat each other. I don't have experience of it. But in a way, our whole governance is written back in 1972, when this kind of thing just wasn't even available.
Yeah.
So there's provision there for how you deal with a difficult meeting and the ability to eject somebody from a physical meeting. And given that we were anticipating some difficulty, then we would have made sure that we had a proper witness, which would be a police officer or a PCSO there. And that, that is what we would have done for a physical meeting.
Yeah, have you spoken to the people that were removed from the meeting? Have you been able to speak to them since, or how's the situation progressing now?
What do you think?
I don't think you would have had contact with them since.
And I don't think you're wrong.
And moving on to young people, you can stand for any UK council when you are 18. However, the Local Government Association, their 2018 consensus discovered that 43% of UK councillors were over 65. Do we need to encourage more young people into local politics?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have had, I'm not going to beat ourselves up too much, because this is something that you really do have to work out over a period of time. It's a change in a mindset. It's not something you just say, oh, come along, and they come along. We have had some success. I mean, 40% of councillors are now female. That in itself is good, can be improved, but I'm also mindful even that 40% tend to be the older generation like myself and even older. So a lot of work to be done there. But that's one of the positives that's really come out of what is not a good insight into parish councils, Handforth debacle. But it has given us this platform. I wouldn't be talking to you here today if it wasn't that. And it's an opportunity for us to say, from 18 onwards, you are welcome to be a councillor. And in fact, we do have some examples where we really have had some success. Say we, I mean the parish council movement, I don't mean, me, where we have in Cheshire, we have had, I believe, the youngest mayor in the country at 19. Yeah. Did a fantastic job. I mean, a mayor usually lasts for a year. It's not an ongoing role. So, there was first of all, a young man that came forward because he was interested in his community. And secondly, the others on that council had sufficient confidence in him to elect him mayor.
Yeah, like that's great news, because there's a lot of people that don't, maybe my age, that don't know that parish councils actually exist. So as you mentioned, a massive positive out of the whole experience is that it's raised awareness of these councils that are very important for local democracy, and in many ways they're going on behind the scenes without people even realising.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I can't tell you how difficult it is to engage with the local community. I mean, that we have an annual meeting. Every council has an annual meeting that must take place between the end of March and the beginning of May. And every year I'm asked the same question: how do we encourage people to come along to that meeting? Some councils offer a buffet, some councils offer a speaker, sometimes they use it as the opportunity to hand out grants from their grants program. Anything to try and encourage people to come in. And it's very difficult unless there is something contentious on the agenda. And that's when people turn up. And that's a pity, because then, you're in an environment where people are already feeling very het up and passionate about something, rather than people coming together for something they want to do together.
Have there been any serious challenges involved with the parish council during the pandemic? Like, notice a change in the way that the parish councils have been run, how people have been able to get involved in them?
Very much so. Certainly, I can only speak for Cheshire. So this is my experience of the Cheshire parishes, not the whole country. But I've always felt that the community and voluntary sector and the parish council sector kind of work in parallel. They both do fantastic jobs in the same communities, but they don't always kind of come together. And what we saw during COVID, during the particularly the very beginning, when we had people who were self-isolating, people who just couldn't go out, people who needed medicines delivered, all that kind of thing. And we really saw the coming together of the town and parish councils and their community groups. And that was fabulous. In fact, we've done 2 or 3 little videos on that, highlighting the work that's gone on in some of our councils as they have risen to the challenge of the COVID support.
And is it, in your opinion, do you think there's enough power given to local authorities for decision making, or do you think it's still quite centralised in government?
I think there is a lot of decentralisation, and I think we're seeing more of it as the principal authorities become shorter of money. So that, certainly again in Cheshire, we've seen over the last 10 years probably a contraction in the ability of the principal authorities to deliver non-essential services due to cuts in funding. So that does mean that if we want things to happen in local communities are really the place where they're going to make it happen, either by volunteering or by funding it or by some combination of the two.
And finally, Jackie, out of everything that's happened in the last few weeks, these crazy weeks, what has surprised you the most? Like, I've noticed there's been like a musical made by Andrew Lloyd Webber, there's been t-shirts, cakes, like Valentine cards. Like, how have you been shocked the most by it all?
I guess what shocks me most, shock sounds like a very negative thing. I guess what surprises me the most is how much communication I've had from people, mainly women, I must admit, who say, thank you for standing up to someone. And I'm horrified by the number of times I hear what appalling experiences they have had. And I think there's really an opportunity here. I think that your point was fairly made earlier about the demographic. I think that sometimes older men are not as good at communicating as younger men. I mean, that's a huge generalization. I'm not talking about everyone. And I think that we really have to find some way of, if we can't encourage good behaviour, then we have to ensure good behaviour. And that would be something I think we're working on nationally and locally by strengthening the current code of conduct for members.
Jackie Weaver, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.